Good morning. My name is Fraser Bell, Chief Commercial Officer at BSO, and welcome to Leveraging the Power of Dubai, our webinar with our partner DGCX. And joining me today is Les Mill, the CEO, and I'll let Les introduce himself.
Thank you, Fraser, and good morning, good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here and to thank our hosts, BSO, for setting up this webinar. So yeah, I'm very grateful for our hosts and keen to share some of our experiences at the DGCX group as to how we've built the exchange and the clearinghouse to the position that it's now in, a successful role that it plays in delivering value and service to our membership base. And indeed, no doubt towards the end of the webinar, happy to answer any questions as well.
Great. So we'll be taking questions at the end. The plan really is for an interactive session for around 25 minutes between Les and myself to understand, for those of you that don't know who DGCX is and why people should trade this exchange. So if you could send the questions on the link that Maria's provided, we'll go around them at the end. So, before we kick off, BSO is a global provider of low latency network connectivity, and we've been partnering with DGCX for nearly 8 years now. And the reason around 8 years is because that's when BSO made a prominence in the Middle East, and DGCX is the forebearer really for exchange connectivity in the Middle East and bringing that around the world. And on that basis, really, I'd like to start with asking Les, why should traders in more established markets in the US and Europe, look to DGCX as an exchange they should trade, and what's the value to them?
So it's a great place to start. Thanks, Fraser. DGCX actually formed in 2005, so we're 15 years old now. We'll be later on this year, and that time has been best served in building DGCX to be the largest derivatives exchange in the Middle East. We actually had, you talk about the more established players in US and Europe, and indeed our membership base incorporates a large number of US and European members that are routing through Europe, whatever, in order to get to the Middle East. Mm-hmm. And the derivatives footprint that we have really covers 4 major asset classes. So we have FX, equities, hydrocarbons, and metals. On metals, we have base and precious, and predominantly all of our contracts that are financially settled. There are 1 or 2 physically settled contracts, and one of those is quite a unique one in spot gold. But that's the metals complex. Hydrocarbons, obviously WTI and Brent are included. The equities space is for the single stock futures in India, equities, and FX, where we probably have our strongest footprint with the G6, the currency pairs, but although actually we offer for trading 10 currency pairs with the G6. And the attraction, one of the main attractions for the more experienced traders is, of course, the Indian rupee, the USD Indian rupee, where the DDCX group has the largest liquidity pool in the world. The open interest that we have was building up all during 2019 and at record levels as we enter 2020. So that is the jewel in the crown, if you like, that attracts the members in order towards DGCX, and then from there they take advantage of those other products that I was talking about.
Very good. Well, thank you for that. So on that basis, then, what are the benefits for trading on DGCX? So we have 4 asset classes, as you said. What are the benefits to the community and your members to trading on that exchange?
Well, I think for me, and I sometimes I'm guilty of using DGCX as the acronym in order to describe the group, because actually there are 2 regulated entities within the group: the DGCX exchange and the DCCC, the clearinghouse. And that the benefit for me is that core role that DCCC play as a central counterparty, the CCP role. DCCC is a fully owned subsidiary within the DGCX group, and as a classic CCP, it offers the same risk management, risk mitigation tools and hedging instruments that people need for managing their asset portfolios or speculating, etc. But it needs to be, and is, attractive to a global audience. And DCCC is recognised by ESMA as a third country CCP. DGCX itself is recognised by MAS, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, in Singapore for the Asian clients. And indeed, DCCC has recently just been fully regulated and licensed as the first in the UAE for a derivatives QCCP.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a regulatory framework, if you like, that is well regarded, and it's well recognized and very attractive as the core benefit in order to come to the DGCX. And then, of course, we offer a position in Dubai that has many advantages in its tax-free nature. All of the large majority of our products are denominated in USD. Right. We trade for 17 hours a day, 5 days a week. And both of those numbers, the 5 days a week and the 17 hours a day, we're looking to expand in due course. But having the exchange rooted and footprinted in Dubai has many, as I say, tax-free advantages, and a lot of our membership base set up companies within Dubai for that very reason. The DGCX group is actually owned by one of the largest free zones, and so we have a lot of that as a grounding sort of role to leverage their global ambitions.
You had me at tax-free last, to be honest.
Yes, I think there's a large tourism interest as well, of course, or used to be in Dubai before the recent events. But yes, there's many advantages to a tax-free existence, of course.
That's clear. And how does trading on the DGCX? So I understand what you're saying there. You're saying that FX is one of your major opportunities, and I understand that if you're trading dollar and the rupee, you're perhaps going back to India and maybe America and London. But what about Asia? So how does trading the DGCX tap into the Asian markets? And because we've got the big growth in Asia at this particular point, and also Chinese markets and the Japanese markets are very liquid. So how do we tap into that?
Yeah, you're right. I think it's a challenge that we're still battling our way through. We've spent the large part of 2018 and 19 putting in place the infrastructure and the ecosystem enable us to build and develop the growth. But the Asian market further east of India, it remains, as I say, still a challenging place for us. I mentioned that we're regulated by MAS in Singapore, the DGCX Exchange, and indeed we have personnel based out of Singapore as well now. But Dubai is known as a city of gold and is an international gateway for trade. And that offers offshore investors the ability to tap into the Indian and China markets. Yes, hugely strong in the USD INR. But we also have the USD CNH, the offshore Chinese RMB currency, that's traded and settled in RMB. And we've explored what we can do with the China market because as I'm sure your viewers are aware, the Belt and Road Initiative passes through the region, and I think something like 30% of all China exports to the Arab world will be routed through the UAE. So there's a strong historical trading route of gold, from African refiners through the hub of Dubai to the Indian and Chinese demand of markets. So there's a historical link there. We're trying to build on that and provide an infrastructure, as I say, that has strong interest for the Asian markets, particularly Asian market players out of out of Singapore. So it's still something that is very much core to our strategy. But as we trying to build on the success of Indian rupee, we'll first look to develop products that are local and regionally relevant, and then expand out from there. Okay.
So I quite like the city of gold touch. I've been to Dubai myself many times, so I understand that. But what's your view on gold then? I mean, at this current economic situation, is it a safe haven? Is it a place where people should be investing? Well, what's DGCX's view and your view on gold?
Well, I mean, I'm happy to answer that, and of course, I should give some sort of conditioning language that whatever I say is no way advice in order to invest or to buy or sell gold. This is just us as a facilitator of others who trade. But what we did see historically, of course, was the classic safe haven route to gold, as the price climbed up through the $1,700s into $1,800 an ounce.
Yeah.
But actually, that's cooled off. And I think what we saw at the end of March with the pandemic was, yes, there was a flight to safety, but actually that safety wasn't so much gold, nor was it incidentally crypto and Bitcoin, as some observers thought it could be. What actually people valued was cash. And if there was a flight to anything, it was cash, and in particular dollar. So a lot of global exchanges saw positions in March not necessarily rolled over to April. That would be a classic pattern that you see in monthly futures. We're seeing our volumes creeping up now from the April low through May and into June, and May was higher than April and June is higher than May. So that confidence is returning. But at the end of May, I think there was as ever in our markets and futures markets, they are somewhat emotionally driven. It's a sentimental view, particularly about the price of gold. And what we saw was that come to the fore, and people really take the dollar as opposed to gold. And that's why I think you've seen the price come off a little bit, and it's a bit more relaxed. Yes. Gold is within the fabric, within the DNA of both DGCX and Dubai, as you mentioned, the city of gold. It would always be incredibly attractive. And I mentioned earlier, we have this Sharia compliant spot gold. And what we've been working very hard on over the last year or so is to develop this regional relevance. And we'll put some news about this in the coming days, but there's a Saudi Arabian ETF that has been established, and it referenced that Sharia gold price, and trades are now going through this week. Our Sharia gold, spot gold contracts are trading for this ETF. It's not a basket, it's a fully owned price reference model. So gold, as I say, there's that historical linkage, of course, there's that emotional attachments. It will never go away. And what we've seen during this pandemic, just to recap, is that kind of initial surge, and then actually what people took from the market was cash, held on to that cash during April with the various lockdowns. And as the confidence is returning to the markets, so we're now seeing a more typical pattern of trading starting to emerge.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. During our, I think it's 8 years, BSO has been the international partner for DGCX. We have seen the need for speed increase. There's a movie there somewhere. The increase coming out of Dubai, particularly taking your services back to London, back to Chicago. Obviously, Mumbai in India has always been a big market. What sort of growth do you expect to see coming forward? I mean, are you expecting to see that, more arrival of HFT business or speed traders or algo traders? Is this the pattern you expect to see?
It's one that we all battle with exchanges and, of course, as infrastructure providers. The word I come back to and I use is balance. I think if the pendulum or the seesaw, to confuse my analogies, goes in too much in one direction, and we have too many HFTs, let's say, I don't think that's necessarily good for the health of the market, and particularly those commercials and corporates that will be stepping in every now and again and looking to lay off volume. So we do need that balance. It's a very subjective field in terms of, let's say, those corporates, those prop shops. If we remember those from back in the day, algos, HFTs, financial institutions, institutional investors. Yeah. We have that sort of healthy mix, and I think that's a very good sign for the underlying liquidity of the exchange. HFTs are never going to go away, and why should they? They provide value, they provide service, and they do increase liquidity. And that, at the end of the day, is what is attractive for market participants to join the exchange. Mm-hmm. So I think there is a race for the speed that you talk about, and I think geographically, if I can sort of shift a little bit, what we're seeing now is interest coming through Africa. It's a forgotten continent in many ways. In terms of circles, but through also those historical linkages of gold, we're now starting to develop much more conversations with very nascent and emerging marketplaces in Africa. But I think, if you look at the underlying metrics of Africa as a country, in terms of the youth, in terms of the very tech savvy youth that you have, I see that as a possible growth area. Whether that's in our lifetime, Fraser, or whether that's something a bit further down the line. But I think that will be a next explosion, if that's not the wrong word, but the next growth in demand.
Interesting. And talking about things which are a bit different, I mean, obviously DGCX is known for being a commodities exchange, but also FX. What about, you mentioned it earlier, but what about the digital world? What about crypto? Is this something that, it's an FX, it's still a currency? Is this something that we could see coming on? Maybe not, I don't know. But is this something we could see coming on to DGCX, or are you more focused on the traditional markets at this stage?
No, I mean, my focus is on what my market participants want and demand. And, we pride ourselves in being a very member-led exchange, but I am asked quite a lot about crypto. And there's two parts to the answer. The first part is that we do not yet have the regulatory framework in place in order to offer or support cryptocurrencies. Okay. The regulator is very progressive in this area. ESCA, Securities Commodities Authority, they have a consultation that went out for view and comment in Q3, Q4 last year. Okay. They've taken those views on board, and I think about now they're looking to come up with some rules-based methodology as to how crypto could be offered. Okay. On a personal level, I think that if the market are demanding it, as I say, we will offer it if we can within the regulatory envelope. As you say, it's a classic FX instrument in that regard. On a personal level, I should confess that I do own Bitcoin and Ethereum, very, very small amount, and I only bought it a year ago, so I have no hidden value there. But I did it as a means of learning about the terminology, about the processes, about the system, and also just to have a bit of skin in the game as to what the price is doing and how that's recovered recently. I think that for exchanges globally, blockchain is something that provides enormous potential. You have one or two exchanges, most notably in Australia, that are being very first movers in this area. Timescales have slipped a little bit, and of course, with recent developments, maybe priorities aren't necessarily there. Yeah, I don't see DGCX Group being a first mover in the blockchain space. I think a large part of the last 2 or 3 years was the DLT technology was kind of looking for a problem that it could solve, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. But that displacement technology There's got to be so much better than the existing proven technology. Here we are, using Swift and BACS, both individually and corporately. It works. And if blockchain needs to displace that, it can't just be as good. It's got to be so much better to have a fundamental shift of mindset and underlying processes in order to make that acceptable to the industry place. So I see the potential for blockchain. Who doesn't? We're both, and all companies are busy with a day-to-day business. So we must keep an eye on how that could provide value and service to our members. But in the meantime, assuming that there's a regulatory permissioning and framework system that's put in place for cryptocurrency, then that's certainly something that we'll be looking at.
Good. I mean, it's something we get asked about all the time. We have cryptocurrency customers. A lot of our, we have over 200 financial customers around the world. There's an interest, and it's a digital currency. And, personally, professionally, there's a lot of people who have digital wallets, and it's something which will grow, is our view, as and when the market, I think, will demand it. I think that's generally what happens. But on that basis, because I think that you're quite a forward-thinking exchange, and I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions about the award that you won last year, because I see some prevalence coming out of exchanges in the Middle East, and obviously DGCX has done really well. So can you talk to us a little bit about, that award and why DGCX was recognized?
Well, it's kind of you to reference that. I think we had two or three awards last year, and we'll see what happens during the course of this year. Awards in our industry space are quite prevalent. It's obviously always nice to be recognised. I think the award, though, is very much for the efforts of the team and the staff at DGCX. We only have about 50 staff, and that's covering a shift operation as well, of course. So it's quite a well-honed team and a very professional team. And if I accept an award, that award is very much for the efforts of the team. But yes, we were having some success in some of our volume contracts, our vanilla contracts. For me, the true measure of success of the exchange is the open interest, and that was at record levels as we started the year. Obviously, it's dipped with people taking positions off in order to preserve the cash. And I think that for me, it wasn't just putting in place the governance and control structures when I arrived 2.5 years ago. It was to shift the focus to say, do you know what? We're a smallish exchange, but a key location and a key role that we serve in order to raise the profile, punch above our weight, if you like. Then we needed to come up with contracts and services that were innovative, that are not just a lookalike to the other global exchanges. As I say, we're never going to throw 10, 100 contracts on the wall and just hope one or two of them sticks. That's not our model. The contracts that we developed during the course of last year, yes, the Sharia spot gold, but also other contracts as well, are offering value to the members and delivering what it is that they require, rather than just hitting them, as I say, with a bunch of contracts that everyone needs to upgrade, GMI systems or whatever. And it's that member-led approach that I hope is why we're recognised, and is the way that we're going to continue going forward.
Good. And it's good. It's good also that we have competition around who are doing well as well in the region. It always helps. So, final question from me. We've been involved with DGCX as your global partner for, as I say, in 8 years, where we've been providing that connectivity out to the world. So what does the future hold for DDCX and for your members or people who could potentially become members? What does the future hold?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's well being more of the same. The strategy that I put in place those 2.5 years ago will start to develop services for other exchanges, and most notably the clearinghouse is the great asset that we can use to offer those services to other exchanges. But also there's other core systems that we can offer as well as the Middle East starts to grow. I think when it comes to to 2020 and beyond, we've got a great platform with our partners at BSO in that we've fine-tuned that ecosystem, and that will act as a platform for growth into 2020 and beyond. For new contracts this year, this time next month, we haven't given the date publicly, but early July, shall we say, we have again another innovative contract. These are rolling FX contracts. These are I would get criticised internally if I call them spot FX, but it's an FX contract that is perpetual. It's a rolling future, a daily future that never delivers. This will be for the dollar sterling, dollar euro, dollar Aussie. And those FX spot contracts, those FX rolling contracts, we think will be very attractive to institutional investors, and we'll look to grow that. We have some INR weekly futures coming out, which gives another tool for our core trader membership base in the INR. I've already referenced the press releases that will be coming out this month, I hope, about the ETF that was set up in Saudi, referencing our Sharia compliant spot gold product. Trades are already happening this week based on that ETF. We have another currency pair that we'll launch this year. I can't name the country, but it's a country that is not served yet by any regulated exchange. It would provide a great risk management tool for those that have exposure to this currency. So it's not just another currency pair, it'll be the first on any regulated exchange.
Very good.
And then by the end of the year, I hope that we'll have the regulatory permission for our mini gold product. This is a 10-gram product that's done in association with Rackbank. Mm-hmm. And again, we'll have that out if we have regulatory approval. But these are all, as I say, they're not just lookalike contracts. They're not your standard vanilla futures contracts. These are quite quirky, if I can use that word, but they are tailored to the needs of the local participants. And as we start to develop those products, we hope and trust that will provide service for our members, but also be hugely attractive to prospective members around the world.
Very much so. A lot of flexibility built into those products, particularly the FX rolling futures contract. I think that'll yeah, you should be quite comfortably positive of that one, Les.
Well, I'm quietly hopeful, I think. Let's see how that contract goes. It's been in the planning a long time, and that would be quite revolutionary in some respects.
Very good. Well, look, that's it from sort of our interaction here. I'm sure there's a couple of questions from the listeners. But look, thank you very much, Les, for taking the time to speak with me directly. And I think that's been a great conversation this morning for anyone who could potentially be a member or potentially an existing member with a little bit more flavour around what it is DGCX are up to. So thank you for that. So Maria, I will pass back to you if there's any questions for Les or myself.
Amazing. This was great. We do have some questions from our participants, and I'm going to read the first one. So one of our participants is asking, what is the relationship between the DGCX and other commodity exchanges, such as the LME and the CME?
Okay, I mean, these are wholly different exchanges. There's no relationship between the CME in Chicago, the LME in London, and the DGCX in Dubai. It's lovely that we're mentioned in the same breath as the majors in that regard, and I think for a participant, it may be, and I don't know what's behind the question, but it may be that something that their clearing broker can provide access to, and if they have a particular interest in the product that's offered by DGCX, then their clearing broker, using probably the BSO ecosystem, already providing that client with access to the CME products or to the LME products, could easily be able to, within their existing collateral, tap into the DGCX products as well. Happy to go into more detail with that specific participant if that's required, but on a very high level, CME, LME, DGCX, completely different standalone exchanges.
Yeah, very clear, makes sense. There is another question. Are there any upcoming regulations that might affect how we trade on DGCX?
there's always upcoming regulations. I'm not sure that we're necessarily have the crystal ball for those. There's nothing in the pipeline that would be detrimental, of course, to the region. I think anything that's coming up will be of maximum benefit. We already have our CCP license, and we'll look to extend that to offer other asset classes, most notably equities, and that will be a regulatory approach that we're working through. As I mentioned before, ESCA are very progressive, probably the most in the region in terms of pushing the envelope for regulatory change. They are working very hard in the crypto space. They're also working very hard on the OTC transactions that I know of. We are, all of us on this call, beholden to the timetables that are set out by the regulator. And the only thing I would say is watch this space, because, as I say, they're very progressive and they're championing a lot of change in the region.
Perfect. I think we have two more questions, Les. So the next one, the participant would like to understand more about the rolling of Forex contract. Will it mimic spot, meaning backing my OTC liquidity providers, including tier 1 banks?
Sorry, you might have to repeat that question, Maria, but you were talking about the specification behind the FX rolling.
Yeah, sorry, it's my connection been a bit unstable. So the participant would like to understand more about the rolling Forex contract. Will it mimic spot, meaning backing my OTC liquidity providers, including tier 1 banks?
The simple answer is yes. In that regard, we can obviously share more details in the coming days. I mentioned we're probably about a month away from launching this product. We are restricting it in the first phase to 17 hours a day. We'll see if the demand is there. We'll extend that to 23 and a half hours a day. But the simple answer to the, I think, more complicated question, but the simple answer is yes. And again, I'm happy to work offline with that participant who asked that question.
Amazing. I will follow up for you and get more details, and then you can follow up. Amazing. So we have a last question, and the participant is asking, what are DGCX plans for the hydrocarbon energy space, and are there any other commodity asset classes on your radar?
That's a very intelligent question. I hope it's not asked by one of my internal colleagues trying to trip me up. But in the hydrocarbon space, yeah, I mean, we have the 4 asset classes, as I say, and I think I look at it as the fourth of those 4. We concentrate more on FX and equities, as we mentioned, and particularly with metals being the DNA of the exchange. I confess there are no immediate plans in this space in terms of hydrocarbon. I have an idea about Sharia compliant oil, but that is really sort of blue sky thinking in that regard, and that's something that I'm keen to explore with our Sharia compliant spot gold now gathering pace. So that's something that we could look at. And then maybe there's a 5th asset class in terms of the softs. Our DMCC shareholder is very active in the tea and coffee space. These are not necessarily lend themselves to futures contracts, notably for tea with the varying standards, and coffee is obviously well served. So it's not a space that we can naturally step into, but it's something that we are very mindful of and seeing if there's a quirky, unique, innovative approach that we could offer the marketplace in that area. But for hydrocarbons, yeah, let's think about Sharia crude oil when I've got some of the products and projects out the way first.
Amazing, brilliant. We had a very engaging audience. So thank you very much, Les. And Fraser, I will pass to you so you can conclude this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Les. Thank you for everyone for joining, and catch up another time. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Fraser. Thanks, Maria. Bye-bye.